In this 10-minute video, I'm going to be giving you a timely update for you here on brand new information from the National Hurricane Center as a major hurricane is now possible out of what is going to become Idalia in the Gulf. I'll have timelines and maps as well as life-saving tips to help you be prepared ahead of the storm. So go ahead and hit that like button. Go ahead and subscribe. Let's get a look at the evening satellite imagery for you here at Saturday, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. You can see Tropical Depression 10 now getting its act together there off the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico, sitting right there. And then we've also got western Cuba feeling some of the impacts from this as Hurricane Franklin stays off to the far eastern zones of that map for you there and well off the east coast. Only Bermuda needs to be worried about that storm. Now, in terms of your current cone and alerts, you can see our Category 1 hurricane is now expected to form for us here and get going here into portions of the eastern Gulf of Mexico. This is going to be west of the Tampa area, but making a landfall there in the armpit of Florida, as it may be called for some of you there. That is what is being anticipated right now by the National Hurricane Center. Before that, though, rainfall totals to 8 inches or more will be possible into portions of the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico for you there. So in places like Cancun, we could see some very heavy rain, and then also places like Havana and Sandino there. Into portions of far western Cuba, we could see some very heavy rain totals, not necessarily up to 8 inches, but definitely some very heavy totals, and downpours will be coming down there for sure. Now, storm strength is key early on as land interaction is possible. You can see the system basically sitting in that tight couple 100-mile window for you there between the far eastern tip of Mexico and the far western tip of Cuba. But nonetheless, a tropical storm is already looking to get its act together, and it is definitely likely to be there just northwest of Cuba on Tuesday. As you can see, some of the purples indicating some of the higher levels of vorticity, which is basically just wind energy getting itself together in the atmosphere. So that is what you're looking at with the product on your screen. The brighter the colors, the deeper those colors are looking for you there. That is when you're starting to see some of the strength. And notice the GFS overall showing a maybe slightly stronger system, but a similar location and overall similar intensity. That confidence is going to be pretty high for us here through at least Tuesday midday. The models are in pretty good agreement in terms of the GFS and the European model coming together. So that is good news. The impacts for the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico as well as western Cuba are pretty much set. Now, areas on the west coast of Florida could begin to see breezy conditions develop on Tuesday. This map is in knots from Pivotal Weather for you here, but nonetheless add several numbers for you here, and you're going to get miles per hour. So say 45 knots is going to be closer to 50-55 miles per hour, and you can see some of the spots on the far southwestern coast of Florida could already begin to see some of the wind gusts, maybe 30-35 miles per hour plus onto your Tuesday. And then as we go towards Tuesday night, that is when strong winds, heavy rain, and the potential for tornadoes in those far eastern bands that can get those spin-ups to occur, that will likely begin along Florida's west coast for you here Tuesday night. So keep that in mind. While this will not be making a landfall at that time, impacts are going to be beginning as early as Monday, but especially as we go towards Tuesday and Tuesday night, that's when this heavy rain and the most dangerous conditions will begin to start to onset for us in those locations. Now, Wednesday is the best chance for a landfall for you here. You can see 1 p.m. Tuesday, it's expected to be a hurricane there over the eastern Gulf. By 1 p.m. Wednesday, a tropical storm entering portions of southern Georgia. So in that kind of middle ground time frame for us here, really, as we go early Wednesday morning, that's probably when the best chance for landfall is going to be. Very heavy rain bands could be pushing on shore into places of far western Florida, so in that armpit area. Cedar Key, you're talking about Apalachicola, some of these regions. And here's my graphic for you here for the chance of 3+ feet of storm surge. This is life-threatening inundation beyond normal levels. And there's a pretty high chance, I think, of some of the storm surge to occur right there in those zones for you there. But you can see all the way down to places like Tampa, the Sarasota, the Bradenton regions for us. We at least have that medium chance for some of the storm surge to develop as far west as southern Alabama in the Mobile region. And you can also see there's a low-end chance for some of this to develop down there as far south as the Keys for some storm surge to get going there, along with the chance of some of the tropical storm force winds. So pretty much the entire state of Florida has at least a 10 to 20% chance of these tropical storm force winds. And while this at best is about 50% for you there in the eastern Gulf right now, trust me, those chances are going to be on the rise as this storm continues to develop, because as certainty increases, chances of the tropical storm force winds always increase with the National Hurricane Center. Now, in terms of your model strength information for us here, this is just overall model intensity guidance. As we go through the next couple of days, we're going to gradually see this intensify up towards that Category 1 strength, but in general, the models are having to stay as a moderate to strong tropical storm as we go towards Tuesday. But notice most of these models have this peaking out as a Category 1 Tuesday night, and into Wednesday. But there's a few of these outlier models that I've been seeing over the course of the last several hours, and they have been showing some major hurricane status, so that needs to be at least monitored as a possibility for a landfalling major hurricane there. But right now it's looking like a Cat 1, Cat 2 is the best possibility at this time. Now, overall track guidance from the model looks like this. You can see this is just with every single hurricane model that we're looking at here on tropicaltidbits.com. You can see the overall, the overall consensus of these models is that this will come in right there into this armpit of Florida, as I've been mentioning. That's the best chance for this to happen for us here, pushing in towards Tallahassee, towards southern Georgia and the Macon area, and then pushing on off through the Carolinas for us. The GFS model run, though, shows more of a landfall in the far western coast of Florida for us here, so this could impact places like Pensacola more with that type of situation, and then it would be heading more inland from there, and as you can see, it could take a track closer towards Atlanta, Georgia, through Greenville, South Carolina, and then back off towards the east from there. So these are all things that need to be monitored closely, because a shift in the track not only shifts impacts, but shifts inland impacts as well, along with that storm surge and inundation that could happen at the coast. So let's read these key messages from the National Hurricane Center that have been issued initially for us here with this first advisory. Heavy rainfall from Tropical Depression 10 is expected across the eastern Yucatan Peninsula and western Cuba. That heavy rainfall will produce the risk of flash and urban flooding, as well as landslides across western Cuba. Again, there is a tropical storm warning in effect, by the way, across portions of far eastern Mexico. And then in far western Cuba, a tropical storm watch is in effect, but I can guarantee you that will be upgraded as well. It is forecast to strengthen during the next few days and could become a hurricane over the eastern Gulf of Mexico, bringing that potential for dangerous storm surge, heavy rainfall, and strong winds to portions of the west coast of Florida and the Florida Panhandle by the middle of next week. Heavy rainfall is also likely to spread into portions of the southeast United States by mid to late week. And although it is too soon to specify the exact location and magnitude of these impacts, residents in these areas need to monitor updates to the forecast of this system. So keep that in mind. Cannot stress this enough. You have to be looking at the impacts day by day. While I'm going to be here and we'll bring you some updates at times, your local National Weather Service office is going to have the best information 24/7 for you, so keep that in mind. A front will combine with Idalia, it's going to be Idalia, of course, to bring flooding rain for us here. This is the European model, keeping with its track for you there into the armpit of Florida, and then right along the coastline there, kind of right hugging the Atlantic coastline with some heavy rain totals. Some spots could see up to 8 inches of rain out of this. The GFS brings not only heavier rain in some locations, but also a more westerly track for us here, which could, result in this banking up against the far southern Appalachians for us there, and bring these heavier totals kind of up the I-85 interstate corridor for us there, if you know exactly where that is. So keep that in mind. That kind of goes, I think, from Birmingham on up towards the places like Charlotte. So anyway, ways to prepare for this. Do what you can around your home. It can help. Patio furniture can become a major hazard. So just go ahead and put that in a safe location or secure it. You can always cut away hazardous trees and board windows ahead of time to reduce damage risk for your property. Figure out an exact evacuation plan if necessary for Florida, which is where evacuations are most likely to be. Visit the Florida disaster.org website to find evacuation routes for prone areas. Keep in mind that you do not need to go to Tennessee from there, just inland and away from inundation. You can go further inland towards Tallahassee even, find somewhere to stay there. If you know friends further inland, stay with them. Continue accessing sources like your local weather service. Again, as I pointed out just a minute ago, while my channel is a great place for information, I cannot have updates on a 24/7 basis like the National Weather Service, so go ahead and visit their sites, read the latest forecast for your city and town at weather.gov for that most accurate, most up-to-the-minute information. Now, storm headlines look like this. Tropical Storm Idalia is developing, bringing rain to Mexico and Cuba. Heavy rain totals upwards of half a foot will impact the Yucatan Peninsula of Mexico along with far western Cuba. This will come along with the chance for winds sustained up to 40 to 50 miles per hour with higher gusts. Flooding and downed trees are expected in those areas along with the landslide potential that I read about earlier. Impacts are very likely to Florida, with hurricane impacts remaining a strong possibility and, in fact, an increasing possibility. The chance for a strong tropical storm to impact portions of the west coast of Florida is very high. Hurricane impacts are looking increasingly likely, as well as the forecast prone brings the system right towards the Cedar Key and Apalachicola region. Meanwhile, though, the exact landfall site remains uncertain with inland impacts up in the air, as the European model continues to show the track it has all along, storm moving right into portions of the armpit of Florida, while the GFS shows a track into the far western panhandle, which could also mean impacts further west as the storm moves inland towards Georgia, Tennessee, and the Carolinas. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I hope you found this interesting. If you did, and it was very informative, go ahead and hit that subscribe button for me. Go ahead and like the video so I can get this out to more people.